This is a video to explain how public limited companies work, and this is one of the basics that you need to understand for theme 3, because in theme 3 you're learning about theory of the firm, and theory of the firm is the area of economics which looks at how businesses operate, and generally we'll be looking at public limited companies, so you need to understand what they are. Tesco is an example of a public limited company. Limited companies, whether they're public or private limited companies, are owned by shareholders. They aren't owned by directors and managers and things like that. Those people work for the business. So down here, working for the business, you're going to have managers and other people who are employees of the company. But if you look at the ownership, for example, of Tesco, it's owned by people who own the shares in Tesco. And when Tesco first issued shares, what they will have done is they would have gone to people and said, would you invest in the business? And this person, for example, might have given £100 to Tesco in return for a certain number of shares. The same with this person here. Maybe they gave £200 and they got some shares in return. If you have a public limited company, this means that anyone is allowed to buy the shares in Tesco. So I could go now and I could buy some shares in Tesco if I went online or to my bank or to a stockbroker. If you have a private limited company, that means that you have control over who owns the shares in your business. In this situation with Tesco, it's a public limited company. And if this person who owns these shares in Tesco decides that they don't want them anymore, they can find another person over here and they can sell them to that person. That's allowed because it's a public limited company. If Tesco is a private limited company, this person would have to have permission to be able to sell the shares to this person, and Tesco would have to say whether that was all right or not. But generally, we'll be looking at public limited companies. So what happens is people put their money into Tesco, particularly if it's the first time that Tesco are issuing shares, the first time they ever do that, they will receive the money from this person, for example, and they'll give them shares. That would be your initial public offering. You don't really need to know that, but it's quite helpful background. Your initial public offering, remember initial means first, like the initial in a word that you write is the first letter of it. So the initial public offering is the first time that a company offers shares to the public. And the very first time Tesco wanted to get some money, they raised that capital, we say, by issuing the shares. Once you've done your initial public offering, if somebody then holds shares and they want to get rid of the shares and get some money, they sell the shares to another person. And as we said, if it's a public company, that can be anybody at all. If you own shares within, say, Tesco, you might receive a dividend. And a dividend is a share of the profits from that business that they make. So if one year Tesco makes some profits, they can decide to pay some of that to their shareholders. And that would be a benefit of owning the shares. However, they don't have to pay any dividends at all. And there are some businesses which are public limited companies which don't pay any dividends, at least at the moment. So for example, ASOS is a business that pays no dividends. And the reason, though, that somebody might have shares in a company, there are two reasons that you would hold the shares, really, would be, number one, if the share price goes up, you can sell your shares and you can make a profit. So, for example, if you buy your shares at £10 per share, but then you sell your shares at £12 per share, you've made a profit, remember that's pi, is £2 per share. So that would be to your benefit. Another reason that you might want to own shares in a business is to get the dividend, because if the business does well and they make a profit, you will receive a dividend if the business decides to pay dividends. But as we said, there are some PLCs that don't pay dividends, like ASOS. But these are the two reasons. And as a shareholder, therefore, you will want the popularity of the shares to go up, because remember, if the quantity demanded of shares goes up, if more and more people want to buy the shares, we know from demand and supply that that will cause the price to go up. So that would cause something like this to happen, and you'd make a profit on your shares. The other thing that you'd want if you're a shareholder is for them to make a lot of profits, so that you will then be more likely to receive a larger dividend if they're a business that's paying dividends. And these are the main things that you need to understand about a public limited company. And remember, the fact that it's limited by shares, that's the last thing you need to know. This person, when they buy the shares for £100 in Tesco, even if Tesco gets into a lot of debt and owes a lot of money, they can only take that £100 from the person. It's possible that that person's shares become worth nothing. They never get the £100 left. They never get the £100 back to them. However, all they can lose is that £100. If this person has a house or a car or anything else, they can't lose that. All you can lose as a shareholder is what you've put into the business when you bought the shares. And that's why your liability, your risk as a shareholder is limited. That's why it's called a limited company. And in other videos, I'll go on to explain more about this.